Everyone who travels will surely agree that the greatest rewards are not so much the journey itself, but the people we meet along the way and what we learn from the places we visit. Not every story is cheerful, and in this one I recount the tale of a special heartache leading to a curious outcome. While on our way from Southampton in southern England to Iceland, we departed the small town of Kyle of Lochalsh on the Scottish mainland to Stornoway on the Isle of Lewis. Being the largest town in the Outer Hebrides, the harbour was jammed with fishing boats. The harbour master allowed us to moor on the cruise ship passenger landing pier, while not in use for its intended purpose. He kindly presented me with a book about Stornoway, and it was here we learned of the dreadful and little-known calamity which had befallen the naval yacht Iolaire on New Year's Day, 1919. During the terrible 1914-18 war, from a population of 30,000, this remote island had contributed 6,000 men. 1,000 of them had died on the field of battle, more per head of population than any other part of the British Isles. Now, on New Year's Eve 1918, with the dreadful conflict finally at an end, the weary survivors were making their way home from every part of the country. Waiting for them in Kyle of Lochalsh was the requisitioned yacht Iolaire. At 7 o'clock on a black winter's night, the ship, licensed to carry just 80, set sail in deteriorating weather conditions with 280 on board. Across the stormy waters of the Minch, their families anxiously awaited the arrival of their loved ones and of celebrating a better and joyous New Year. But a cruel fate intervened. At 1:55 a.m., within a mile of her destination, the Iolaire struck a reef named the Beast of Home, just 50 yards from shore. In raging seas and a force 10 gale, out of 280 men on board, only 79 survived. 40 of them credited to the heroic action of John Finlay MacLeod, who battled the waves to get a line ashore. On January the 6th, the Scotsman newspaper reported, "Language cannot express the anguish, the desolation, the despair which this awful catastrophe has inflicted. One thinks of the wide circle of blood relations affected by the loss of even one of the gallant lads, and the imagination sees these circles magnified by the number of the dead, overlapping each other until every hearth and every home on the whole island is shrouded in deepest gloom. A generation of young men was wiped out, men who would neither carry out the heavy tasks of the traditional family crofts nor see their families grow up. The bodies of 1/3 of those lost were never found." More ancient than the pyramids of Egypt, the Kallanish stones have stood witness to many tragedies, but few as tragic as this. There is an interesting footnote to this awful story. Not far from the site of the disaster lies the hamlet of Tong, the home of a young girl named Mary Ann MacLeod, the youngest of 10 siblings. Being nearly 7 years old at the time of the disaster, her earliest memories must have included the grief and disruption it caused. 2 years later, the Calvinist sentiment of the religious island stigmatized Mary's older sister, Catherine, for having a child out of wedlock. This likely encouraged her to join the exodus and emigrate to New York. A decade later, at age 18, Mary boarded the RMS Transylvania to join her sister. The extreme contrast between her remote island home and the frenetic chaos of New York can only have been overwhelming. Through her sister, Mary found employment as a Scottish maid with Louise, the widow of none other than Andrew Carnegie, in her palatial home, Carnegie Hall. Mary met Fred Trump, a property developer of German descent, at a dance, and they married in 1936. Donald, her fourth child, was born 10 years later. Throughout her life, Mary Trump was a philanthropist who supported many charities. Almost every summer, she visited the Isle of Lewis, and when there, she spoke Gaelic. She died in the year 2000 at the age of 88. But there remains yet another aspect to this extraordinary story. A perfect example of the butterfly effect, which states that tiny local events can lead to transformative consequences. In this case, a sperm, visible only through a high-powered microscope, released on a remote Scottish island, was but the first step along a devious path spanning 100 years and more than 3,000 miles to culminate in a true demonstration of the chaos theory, with consequences as yet unknown.